You're listening to Telecast PH. I'm pretty sure that we can all agree customer support frontliners have a dual job. On one end, they're the face and the voice of the company. They are the first line representation that customers have when they contact a company or business with an issue, a request, or some other form of communication. However, they are also the face and the voice of the customer for the rest of the company. It's the job of the support team to not only collect feedback about the interaction that they just may have had with the customer, dealing with an issue and coming to a resolution, but also the overall customer feedback about the product, the service, and the company itself. So how do we collect that information, and what's the best way to utilize and, most importantly, respond to customer feedback? You're going to find out right after this. Hello all, and welcome along to another episode of Telecast PH with me, your host, Geoff Thompson. I'm the Director of Client Solutions here at Telework PH and the voice of offshore outsourcing. Thank you so much for joining. Now, as we continue on with our series dedicated to scaling and managing support teams, one of the more critical and interesting topics that really needs to be discussed, and we're doing so here, is customer feedback, how to collect it, what to do with it, but most importantly, how to respond. But as always, before we get into that conversation, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's podcast, Telework PH, a premier and award-winning BPO here in the Philippines. Telework PH, we build your team, you get the benefit. And if you want to find out more about Telework PH and how we can help your business scale up with a customer support team or a highly skilled virtual assistant in any area of your business, all you got to do is hop on over to www.teleworkph.com or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm Geoff Thompson, Director of Client Solutions for Telework PH and the voice of offshore outsourcing. All right, now let's get into that conversation I had with Geoff about handling and responding to customer feedback. Hey guys, welcome along. And I got Geoff Ankuda here, and we're going to be talking about best practices in responding to customer feedback. Hey, Geoff, thanks so much for joining. Do you want to just dive in and tell us a little bit about yourself and your position?
I'm the customer support manager here at Emperor Systems, pharmacy SaaS solution. And what my role is overseeing a team of agents who respond to customers through email, chat, and phone. So they'll call in, they'll send an email saying they're having a technical issue with the product, a network issue, something like that. And then I will coordinate our team's response to getting their problem solved.
Sounds pretty cut and dry, but looking at your LinkedIn profile, and I dove in, you talk about how you and your team have been able to see CSATs rise to new highs. That's a quote. CSATs rose to new highs. And that is truly one of the most important aspects of any business, customer feedback. Good or bad, customer feedback is worth its weight in gold. Now, you just mentioned that you use multiple channels like chat, email, social media, stuff like that. So how do you ensure feedback from customers is gathered efficiently from all of those channels?
That's a great question, Geoff. So what we do is at the end of a ticket, the requester automatically receives a survey, and I make sure that my agents either by phone if they're talking to them or by email, just remind the customer that thank you so much for working with us. Thank you for being a customer. And by the way, a short survey is going to be coming your way. Sometimes, just depending on email systems, whatnot, it might fall into spam, it might get blocked or something. So we like to give them a heads up that a survey will be coming your way, and if you could just take 2 minutes to fill it out, it would really help us improve the experience for you.
And that is a great idea. I've been on the phones before myself, and I do remember, when I first started on the phones, they would tell us that, at the end of the call, please remind them, because they do kick out an email. But once the customer's resolution has been, well, their issue has been resolved or the resolution has been reached, they pretty much just end the communication right there. So they're not even paying attention to that extra email that's coming in, but letting them know that, that they have a choice now, or a chance, I should say, to offer that feedback, is a great way. You have to let them know that it's going to be coming their way. Well, that leads me then, to my next question. Again, back to your LinkedIn profile, and I really liked what you said here. You said, and I'm quoting, "I always keep an eye on the wider customer support world. I love diving into the surveys I get after a sale to see if there's a question, format, etc. That would help make the feedback from customers even more useful in building the best experience possible." Everything from how easy it is to answer to the way questions are posted matter, as they all determine if the customer will give you data you need to keep driving improvements. And for me, that there sums up the basic mentality that every support manager or director strives for or should strive for. So, following that up, how do you empower your frontline support agents now to respond to feedback quickly and effectively without compromising quality?
Yeah. So I actually drive our response to feedback. I will, if we're getting a really great response from someone saying, I worked with this agent and it was the best experience I've had. I've been really fortunate. We have an amazing team here. All my agents are hardworking and dedicated and just wonderful with customers. And that reflects in the feedback we receive. So when we hear that by name, I reach out and say, thank you so much. I'm this person's manager, and I wanted to let you know that we did get this feedback, and I really appreciate it and love that you had such a great experience working with this agent.
So yeah, so you follow up and let them know that
Yeah.
that it's been received. And right there, that extra step reminds the customer how important and valued they are. Even if it's great feedback and you're telling them, "Hey, listen, we appreciate the great feedback." Really lets the customer know that they have a voice. But what about negative feedback, say about a specific agent? I mean, so let's face it, we all love our customers and highly value them, but sometimes they can be a little irrational, and yet sometimes they may have a valid point about an agent's handling of the issue.
Yeah, I actually dealt with something like that very recently where worked with someone who they ultimately had gone around, we'll say established process for something, and we got that feedback and that they weren't happy with how we resolved it. So I looked back and I said, okay, granted they went around the process and that's on them, but what could we have done? They went around the process. What's done is done. They're here with us now. What can we do to make sure they get the best experience? Whether it's officially on the four corners of support or not, what can we do in support to make sure that they get the answers they need in a timely fashion, that we get them connected with who they need in a timely fashion, and that they're happy with the resolution? And that's when I went back to the agent who handled that case and I talked through about, here's some things you can do if this ever happens in the future. Here's how you can refer people on, make sure you're including folks in the conversation saying, I'm going to include whoever manages your account, things like that, to make sure that there's visibility into that. We're not just saying, oh, I'm going to hand you off and that's it. Like I'm going to hand you off and ticket is closed. The focus is not first ticket resolution. It's not pure numbers of just get it closed, get it done and move on. Be that bridge, whether it's an internal resource, whether it's an external resource, whether it's a vendor resource, be that bridge for the customer and make sure they know that we are here to support them. And this isn't something that is really in our realm, but we want to make sure they have a good experience. So we're going to be there the whole way to make sure it works out for them.
So again, you take that feedback, you go back to the customer and you give them a voice.
Yep.
You're asking them, hey, what could we have done? What would have been the ideal outcome or the ideal handling process that for you?
Anytime we see a survey with, it's 1 out of 5, one being I did not have a good experience, 5, the best experience I've ever had. Anytime I see a 3 or below, my standard is I reach out to the customer. And right up front, I thank them for their feedback. Even if it's something I don't want to hear, because it's, maybe it's something about an agent or the way we handled something or the product. I thank them for their feedback because all feedback is good feedback and constructive criticism only helps us grow. So that's always my opening line is, I'm reaching out about the feedback you provided on this case. And first, I want to thank you for providing that feedback. And then I get into I understand and read your concerns, and I'd like to set up a time to talk and just discuss them a little more thoroughly and what we could do in the future to give you a better experience.
That is a great way to de-escalate, fiery situations or, a lot of anger that might be bouncing around. Now, is the agent involved in that conversation, or is that normally just a conversation between you and the customer?
That's a conversation between me and the customer. The agent comes in after in more of like a mentorship role. That's where
Mhm.
I'm mentoring them to say, here's the conversation I had with the customer. And here's what they brought up. Here are some things that I think you could have done better. Here's areas where you did a great job, and this was just a no-win scenario, and that's not on you. And then there are points when I may say, but here are some areas where you could have softened it a little bit and made it easier on the customer, and maybe we would have seen a better outcome.
See, I love that. There's a lot of times when, I've heard of businesses that use CSATs, that use customer feedback to penalize the agent. Now, obviously, if it is a repeated issue, if it's something that, or an action or, behavior that they're repeating over and over and over again, absolutely they need to be penalized at some point. However, but taking that customer feedback as a learning, platform for the agents to do better next time, because again, let's face it, being on the phones 8 hours a day, it can wear on your nerves. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes, the patience just wears out, for the best of us.
Yep.
So, taking that feedback as, removing the agent from that situation and taking that feedback and diffusing it, like you said, you know what I mean? And then coaching afterwards is, I mean, that right there is the perfect process, I think, for handling customer feedback, especially negative customer feedback. So now my next question is, now I'm certain that you get feedback from customers about how things could be done overall, maybe some suggestions, right? So what framework do you recommend for prioritizing customer feedback, especially when you were to get like conflicting suggestions? Like, if you have one customer that says, hey, you should do it this way, or one customer says, no, you should do it this way, in totally opposite ways. How do you prioritize your customer feedback?
I prioritize it based on impact. So if we get, say we get two pieces of feedback about the software that are conflicting, I want this feature turned on and I want this feature turned off. I look at the why and I have a call with the customer and say, what about this? What about having this feature on would improve your workflow, make your business more profitable, and make your life easier? And then have that same conversation with the on person, and then take both arguments, both discussion points to development to understand what kind of how heavy a lift is this, so I can be realistic with the customer about expectations and level set expectations. If it's I want this off because it's a little on the annoying side, it's a little inconvenient versus, oh, we need this on because it's something we have to report to the state. Those are two very different priority levels. And the person who, well, it's something we're going to be audited and we have to have this information. That takes priority over, it would be nice if this were, if that makes sense.
Right. Right. Yeah. And obviously if you have, 20 people or 30 people lining up and saying, this feature needs to be turned on, then that is something that you're going to want to prioritize over just, one person that says, hey, this is annoying, turn it off. So Geoff, what KPIs or metrics do you track to ensure feedback is properly addressed? Because I know you mentioned earlier first response time, and we were talking about CSATs or closure rate. What KPIs or metrics do you really like?
I heavily, like I said, I don't go by first response because not a lot of problems are for, unless it's something like I need to reset my password, something at a very base level,
Right,
which
right,
reasonably can be done. If it's not something like that, I'm not expecting it to be closed right away and closed, within the day. I really look at this. I like to talk about CSAT as a story. So my biggest, if and I'm not saying the other things don't matter. Obviously, SLA, level agreements have to be met. Reasonable expectations of communications with customers have to be met. All of those things factor in. But at the end of the day, if the customers are routinely giving us, 97, 98% feedback and, positive feedback, then that tells the story that, okay, maybe the SLAs are a little long, but the customers are happy. We're communicative with them and they are okay with how long things are taking. If that went in the other direction, then we would have to make adjustments.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And you mentioned, about how long things are taking. I know I'm not really sure about your customer base, but I know in today's world, people are expecting things a lot quicker, a lot faster. Sometimes when things drag out for a couple of days, it can lead to some, ruffled feathers or something like that. So leading into my next question then is, how can a customer support team be proactive when they think that negative feedback might be coming in?
I always tell folks, one, always keep your promise and always keep your promises. And what I mean by that is if you tell a customer, we're going to talk tomorrow at 2 p.m., you're talking tomorrow at 2 p.m. If you made that commitment, it's happening, and give realistic timelines. Let them know that well, I'm going to be having an internal resource look at this. By the way, I happen to know this person is out on Thursday and Friday, so they may not be able to take a look at it until Monday. They may sooner, but I just wanted to I wanted you to be aware of how long this can take. I think a lot of heading things off the path involves, setting the baseline of when something's going to get done and really setting expectations. And that's not to say we're just explaining away delays. It's letting a customer know this is the reality. And if it's more urgent, please let me know and I can look to move things around and see if someone maybe could look at it on Thursday if it can't wait until Monday. But we won't know that until we ask. So a big part of it is making sure that you are communicating with the customer. And really, I ask my agents always keep me in the loop. If you're getting a vibe that a customer's really upset or they've said something's urgent, CC me on it because I want to look at it. Maybe I'll call the customer and have that harder conversation with them myself about here's what we can do this week, here's what we can do next week. And I always lead with an apology if it's something that is our fault for
Mm-hmm.
a delay. I apologize for the delay. I understand this is impacting your workflow. Here are the concrete steps that I am taking to get this done for you. Like I will always take the heat for one of my agents and make sure that the customers understand what we as a team are doing.
I like that. I like that transparency. You're letting them know it's not just, hey, we'll let you know when it's ready. It's more of you're giving them these are the solid actionable steps that we are taking, that we are doing. I can keep you updated every step of the way, and that really again lets the customer, it's like involves the customer with the resolution. How do you gauge when to be transparent and when to not be transparent? Because I know, like I said, I've worked support lines before, and you get to a point where you want to be transparent. You know what I mean? Where, like, okay, look, we screwed up bad. But how transparent do you want to be about how bad you screwed up? Because, it may eventually affect the account or affect that customer doing business with you in the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. In those cases, I'll pull in the account manager for an account, for a quick talk about, okay, here's what happened. What's done is done. Talk to me. You know the customers. You talk to them. Maybe you have a weekly touch point. You know them at a better level than I do. Talk to me about this person. Not as a customer, but like as a person. How do they take feedback? Is it best to deliver bad news by a phone call, by email? What can we tell them and what can't we tell them? Or and I never will never throw an individual agent kind of in front of a bus. It's a company effort, and I think that regardless of what company you work for, that's true in support of good customer management. Is it's not, oh well, this agent is all responsible. Well, I'm their manager. I'm responsible if they aren't doing their job. So it's we apologize. We agree this was an unacceptable delay, and I sincerely apologize for the trouble it caused you. Here are some concrete steps we're going to take in the future to make sure this doesn't happen again, and these were the lessons learned. And then have the conversation with the account manager. What can we do to make this better? Beyond concrete steps, do we need to comp them a month of service? What needs to happen? Things like that.
Right on. And then that makes me circle back to your LinkedIn profile where you say that, you have strengthened interdepartmental alliances. And that is so important again for a support team to work within an organization, is to have those relationships with the account managers, with the sales department, with development, with whomever. They need, because they need to be sharing information and they need to be working together, just like like you mentioned that, if you're having this, really bad issue and you don't know what to do, then you can go to the account manager and the door is open and you can have that conversation. So yeah, I mean, that's a perfect way to handle it if you ask me. But my next question is more along, on the team level. Now, again, back at, you mentioned on your LinkedIn profile how you'll help hop on the phones, when times are rough, when, during peak times and everything else. But how do you, so let's say you are getting, let's say you had a P1, that, something happened and there was a lot of negative or harsh feedback coming in from your customers. And they know that every time that phone rings, it's going to be somebody who's mad. There's going to be somebody who's already upset. How do you handle that negative or harsh feedback and not letting it demotivate the team itself?
Yeah, we will if it's something that urgent, we'll call everyone together, call a quick meeting and say, "Hey, everybody, I need to talk to you right now about a situation. Here's the situation." Like when CrowdStrike happened, that's a perfect example. That's something outside our control, but customers are upset that their systems aren't working, and it's nothing we did. And that was true for a lot of support teams that day. It was nothing that they did. It was just that the CrowdStrike thing hit everybody. So, what I told folks is just be patient with folks, be understanding. Even if it's something that we can't help, there's limits to how far you should go at, supporting something that's not our product. But, if someone calls in and say, "Well, I just can't get my computer," a lot of people had the blue screen of death that day. And that's not
Mhm.
something we can support per se, but we lead with empathy and lead with we understand that they need to sell prescriptions that day. Folks are waiting for medicine. What can we do in the moment to help de-escalate and solve the problem? On that call, say, "You know what? I've got the cell phone number for your IT department right here. Let me patch them in and see if we can get someone down there today to help you."
Love it. So what I'm hearing is like basically you want to empower them with the knowledge that
Right.
they don't have to cringe when they know that, okay, so this is happening and that phones are ringing off the hook and every time I pick it up, as long they have that knowledge and they know that, hey, I'm going to be able to handle this and I can turn this angry customer around and they're going to be a loyal customer.
Yeah, the biggest thing is like giving and not giving them a script because I don't believe in that kind of support of, you get this script and you only get this answer, but giving them talking points to say, "We are
Mhm.
aware of this problem. Here's the issue. Here's what Empress is doing to solve it. Here's the ultimate issue, and within your organization, here are some folks who can help you."
I love it. I love it because yeah, I mean that's like I said, you might not be able to solve their problem that they're having, but giving them some information instead of just cutting them off and saying, see you later. Hey, it's not our problem. No, you're saying here, we can help this way, but we can't help with solving what you need. I love it. So what strategies do you recommend? Now, you had mentioned that anything below a 3, you reach out automatically, right? But what strategies do you recommend for other businesses that maybe you have come into contact with even for following up with customers after their feedback is implemented?
That goes to the that really goes to the account manager to say someone provided us some feedback and it was positive, but they said, by the way, I think this would really be helpful. I follow up because I do, like I talked about, constant communication with account managers. I have a weekly meeting with our account managers to say any customers have any issues that maybe just haven't come through yet, I haven't seen yet. Even the agents, like maybe they haven't mentioned it to the agents, but it came up as an aside during a phone call, just a what I need to know kind of meeting. And during that, I'll say any enhancement requests that have been fulfilled lately where we need to reach back out to the customer and let them know that this is done. So I think that is a key strategy for companies is not just take in feedback, but and have it sit in a repository, but act on feedback. And it's okay if I mean, development takes time. If I provide
Yes.
feedback on to Zoom on a feature, of based on something, that I ran into during the call today, and they say, "Okay, we're going to start working on this and we'll keep you informed." And 6 months later, they come back to me and say, "Hi Jeff, we've been working on your feedback and your enhancement request, and we were actually able to do this. Here's the new feature. Thank you so much." That would really make me feel heard, not just that it kind of went into a black box of enhancement request that'll never get filled.
Exactly right. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I personally hate chatbots. Uh, I understand that a lot of companies like to use chatbots, but I can't, maybe I'm an old guy. I'm Gen X, I'm 52. But if I get on and this is a little bit of a rant for me. If I get on and right away, there's a chat bot that's giving me a list of questions that I have to stick to. I don't I already know this isn't going to go well because my question isn't there, and I just don't have that warm fuzzy feeling that somebody's taking care of it. And even when they say, okay, yeah, your request has been submitted, we'll let you know when there's a resolution. Then they send you an email saying the same thing. And you just sit there and you just like, you'll wonder, I mean, is this really going to happen? You know what I'm saying? So it just, you fall into this abyss. So, like you said, following up with the customers and the account managers, yeah, it's crucial. And having, again, that alliance between, those inner departments really helps out there. So it's the entire company, really, not just the front end support, but it is the entire company working together that keeps the customer happy.
Yeah, and I think it's important also to be cognizant of channel matching when it comes to feedback. So when I say channel matching, I mean if the customer has predominantly been giving us feedback or communicating their needs to us through the phone, you know, give them a phone call and talk their issues through. But if maybe they're really busy and they just don't have the time to talk on the phone and it's easier for them to work asynchronously through email, respect that and send them an email and say, with a list of questions that you want and let them get back to you on their schedule. I think back to I was at the hospital a couple months back, and after I was finished, I got this thick envelope with one of those fill in the bubble surveys
Mhm.
that makes you think back to doing tests in high school.
Right,
And
right,
I
right.
just thought I'm like I can't. I'm like this is we're almost at 2025 and you're sending me physical mail. I have to handwrite things and mail it back. Like what are you do? Like how are you? This is no way to get feedback. It's
No, no, yeah,
slow.
it's an email.
Like send me an email, but also be respectful and ask first. Don't assume how you can gather my feedback. I actually left a dentist's office and changed dentists one time because they were right after a visit, like right after the visit, an automated text would come saying, how was your feedback? And I don't want to be pressing buttons while I'm holding an ice bag to my mouth after
Right.
you did dental work. That's the last thing I want to think about. And I didn't like I gave you my phone number for like scheduling and stuff, not to be texting me for surveys and all this stuff. And it'd be really like make sure that the way you're gathering feedback is the way the customer wants to give it. Don't just assume because you have their cell phone number that they gave you as a kind of a favor for an emergency or their personal email. Don't assume that that is a channel you can use. Make sure that the channel you're matching and the channel you're using to gather feedback is the way they want to give it because maybe they need it to go to a group email so that everyone can weigh in on a response before it's given.
Right. And also, another thing that I've noticed, one of the things that I don't like is when the surveys are more than 5 or 10 questions. 10 at the very, I mean, 10 is for me is pushing it. 5 questions is pretty good. One question, how was your experience today? You know what I'm saying? And just rate 1 to 5. And if you give a low, why? What could we have done better? Then it would be up to the support manager or whomever to take that feedback and respond to it. But I've seen those surveys where they send and it's just I don't I don't fill them out. I'd be hard pressed to know who really does take the time. Yeah, if somebody shoved an envelope in my hand with a bunch of bubbles, like that, what do they call it, the Iowa Basic exam we used to take in school, the SATs. No, I wouldn't. It would go right in the trash. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, if you send me an email and say, hey, how was your experience? Can you rate us? Give us a rating. Um, then that's fine. But yeah, so yeah, channel matching. That's an important point. That is a very important point.
I think it's also like you talked about the length of the survey is
Hmm.
this is another thing you're kind of asking them really as a favor to give you feedback. So it's not like something they're required to do. It's you're asking more of their time. You've taken enough of their time
Hmm.
fixing their problem. You're asking for more of their time. So you should respect that time and keep it as short and concise to just get the information you need and move on. To your point, if I get go buy something and I get an email survey and I open it up and I see a page two, I just close it and don't even start it or finish it. Like I'm not doing multiple pages of surveys. And
Right.
that's what, when I talked about what I look in the larger support world, there have been times when I've interacted with a product or a company and I've gotten a survey back, or I've seen how maybe their chatbot works, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I normally don't like this, but I really liked how this worked. I keep a list of, like, this company had this product that I like, or this feature that I liked in their support environment. It was really easy, and I was able to provide feedback in a fluid way. Or I really like the survey questions I was asked here. And I asked my team to kind of just keep an eye out, as you're out in the world, if you are at the grocery store, the drugstore, I don't know, buying stuff at the supermarket, what kind of surveys do you get? And if anything ever catches your eye as, like, this was really simple and easy, let me know. I like to follow up and see it for myself, because I don't think any support manager has all the answers, and you can always grow and base your next survey on best practices in the industry.
Well, I was just thinking about sometimes play, online games, not online, but on my phone, and I like my kids, they play the big games on the PlayStation. Me, I play things like, match three fruits in a row on a grid. You know what I'm saying? It passes the time when you're just sitting here. But right in the middle of that thing, right in the middle of a good move, that thing pops up and wants you to rate them. You know what I'm saying? You hit the star, and then it'll take you to another page. So you've left your game, which I was excited about. Now they're getting a 1 star. Okay, because you took me away from my game. It's along those lines. It's those surveys, the feedbacks, what they're asking for. It can get daunting, and you're right. You're asking them for their time. It's not in their agreement that they have to give you feedback. So make it as simple for them as possible. Make it as painless and simple, but impactful. So for our listeners, for those support managers out there that may be new to the game, now we just talked about, some of the common pitfalls that you've seen that companies are making when responding to feedback. What advice would you give for other customer support managers that may be doing these things that we're talking about, and they're thinking in their heads, oh my goodness, how do you avoid them? How would you avoid those situations?
I would say don't be afraid to lean into uncomfortable situations. And what I mean is, say you've got a customer who, you know what, they just don't, they're upset, and maybe it's a legitimate concern, complaint, maybe it's not. Either way, it's how they feel. And really lean in, and don't just give the perfunctory thank you for your feedback, but if you've got a customer who's really upset, take the time and talk to them and figure out what's going on. Make an extra effort to do touch points with them and say, I saw, you had 10 tickets open last week with us. Now you're down to 5 tickets. It's great. We're making progress. I just want to talk to you and see how you were doing. Are you having a better experience with the product? You know, and that customer, they may just tear you up one side and down the other, and that's part of the job. Don't be afraid to lean in and really get that feedback, because in there the customer may begrudgingly say, I've just had such a hard time, but it's getting better. And at the end of it, usually folks will say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take it out on you, I'm just really frustrated. And
Mm-hmm.
they just want someone to hear it. And that's usually a result of a buildup of, maybe they haven't been heard in the past, before you were working with them. So it's important to give them the space to communicate and listen. If they say, I don't know if your product's going to work for me anymore. Well, what is going on beyond what you've already talked about? What would make your experience better? And you can't solve everything. There are times when you do everything right and you still lose and get the negative feedback. And it's the law of averages. It'll wash out if what you're doing is good. That one will get carried away by a number of fives. It'll still hurt and it'll still affect things, but the story is, 98% of our customers are thrilled, and this 2% of customers, they have some very specific issues that we're working through.
Right. As a support director, even on support manager, or even on the phones, the agents that are taking the calls, you do have to have thick skin, but also empathy, so that's a strange mix. But what I used to tell my team all the time is, when they're angry, they're not angry at you. Okay. They're not yelling at you. They're yelling at the situation. They're angry with the situation and they're frustrated. Why do people go to a restaurant? Because they're already hungry. right? So why are they calling support? Because they're already encountering a problem, which is frustrating. Some customers take it better than others, and some are like you said, they've already reached a point where, you're at the end of the line where this is going to go south or it's not, where they've gotten there. And I guess I should backpedal a little bit on the chat bots, because I know you mentioned it. I don't want to say that I'm completely against them, um, because they do have their place. You know what I'm saying? For, the simple questions, the how-to questions, in the beginnings, certain like again, like, how can I change my password? I would much rather get a chat bot that can just give me a little bit, instead of trying to have a conversation about that. Something simple. But for the more delicate and the more, intricate issues that do require a conversation or attention, then I would much rather, have a human on the other end. Hey, Geoff, to wrap this up, can you share a success story that you've had where acting on feedback may have led to a significant improvement in the company?
Yeah, I can think of one example where the very first time I was introduced to a customer, they were not having a good time, and they used some language I won't repeat here, but, with me, and it was rough. It was that thick skin you talked about. I had to take a couple minutes after and collect myself, and
We've
you
all
know
been
what?
there.
But then
Everybody,
I
every
then
support manager
yeah,
has been there.
but then I looked at it, I listened, I took notes during the call, and I looked back, and you know what? He was right. And we were wrong in this situation. It was a situation where something kind of wasn't being handled very well for him, and I looked at what we can do and got a process in place so that this specific customer would be handled in a specific way until his problems were resolved, and then how can we normalize it so he's getting a better experience going forward. And that customer and I are on a great first name basis now.
Oh, that's a great story. That is a great, turning those things around again. Like I said, when they come in and they're using that language, no filter, just letting it fly, and you turn it around and you turn that customer into your biggest ally. Because not only now, well, have you retained, to put it bluntly, you've retained that revenue, you've retained that customer, you've made that customer happy with your service, but also they're going to spread that. They're going to tell other people, and that's, no marketing can match word of mouth advertising.
Yep.
Today's world, everybody has, I call it this big megaphone called social media. And you can scroll through your Facebook at any time and hear somebody's frustration, and they have no problem naming the company, time, and place when things went south for them. So that's some great advice. Any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
I would say just that always try to be within for a customer support manager. Your role is largely to be the voice of the customer for the rest of the organization. When they bring up that they have concerns, those concerns are your concerns, and you're passing them on to the folks who can make a difference. Understand, like you talked about, when you can reveal things, when you can't, be tactful, be smart. There are times you just can't overshare, and there are times when you just have to own up and tell a customer, we screwed up. And everybody, there are times when everybody makes a mistake and screws up, and you own it. And when you really own it, I think customers are more ready to accept that, because they're not just getting they're not getting a boilerplate, macro response out of your ticketing system. They're getting a phone call from someone who they can follow up with and say, you know what, we really didn't do a good job on this. I want to make this process right for you. If you have this problem again, before you put in a ticket, give me a call. Here's my number. If we keep seeing this, then I'm going to escalate it internally for you.
Geoff, thank you very, very much for being here. I know our listeners got a lot out of your advice, and from your experiences.
Yeah, thank you so much, Geoff, for having me on.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Telecast PH. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Geoff Thompson, and if you're ready to explore what offshore outsourcing can do for you with a remote team or a virtual assistant for your business, check us out at www.teleworkph.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. And until then, may the force be with you.